The silence was unmistakable. At first, it wasn't so much a disappearance as a pause, a brief lull in the torrent of data Earth usually sent rippling through the stars. Every human-made signal, every broadcast from Earth's bustling cities, every distant probe transmitting its findings across light years of space, all of it simply stopped. To the rest of the galaxy, it was an anomaly, a glitch in the network. Maybe Earth had simply forgotten to switch the lights back on. Maybe there had been a technical issue. But then weeks turned into months, and no one had an answer. No one had even an explanation. And so the whispers began. In the crowded diplomatic chambers of the Galactic Alliance, the whispers spread quickly. The Eurelians, a peaceful species with long-range communication technology, were the first to notice it. Their long-range sensors should have been picking up all manner of signals from Earth, radio waves, light or subspace pulses. But there was nothing, just a gaping, empty void. Earth's gone quiet. Their chief ambassador, Irela, muttered to her council, her brow furrowed in concern. Too quiet. Other races, like the Vexari, a nomadic species of traders, suggested that humanity might have simply outgrown their need for galactic contact. Perhaps they had ascended to a higher state of being, beyond the need for simple communication. The Vexari were always eager to chalk up such things to mysticism. But the Eurelians didn't buy it. They were the first to press the Alliance for answers, and their voices quickly gathered support from other factions. In the heart of the Xoroth Dominion, where paranoia and aggression were as natural as breathing, the silence was seen as a threat. To the Xoroth, humanity was a curious enigma, primitive, volatile, yet teeming with untapped potential. Over the years, the Xoroth had grown both fascinated and unnerved by Earth's rapid technological leaps. They believed the humans had to be watched carefully and closely. After all, the Xoroth had never forgotten the ancient prophecy passed down through generations, that one day the humans would rise, and their power would be felt across the stars. Kalos, a young but ruthless commander within the Xoroth War Council, was one of the first to argue that the silence wasn't a coincidence. He believed Earth's sudden quietude was a calculated move, a demonstration of strength, perhaps even the sign of some new dangerous weapon humanity had perfected in secret. What if they've developed something to incapacitate us? Kalos said to his superiors one day in a darkened conference room. Or worse, what if they've gone silent to hide their true intentions? The Dominion's high command was skeptical. Birth had always been unpredictable, yes, but they lacked the firepower to threaten the Xoroth directly. Or so they thought. Yet Kalos was unconvinced. As months passed, he began to assemble a strike force. Whether it was a weapon or a trap, he was determined to find out. And when the time was right, he would make Earth's silence very, very loud again. With every passing day, Earth's absence on the galactic stage felt heavier, and the galaxy grew more certain of one thing. There was something far worse than a mere blackout happening on that distant, quiet world. And soon, they would all know what it was. The Syndilax dropped out of hyperspace just outside Earth's orbit, and its arrival sent a tremor of unease through the galaxy. The ship was a massive behemoth, a war machine so advanced and formidable that the mere sight of it sent lesser species scrambling for cover. Its hull, a patchwork of dark alloys and sleek, razor-edged architecture, radiated a cold, ominous power. The Xoroth, one of the galaxy's most feared empires, had come to investigate Earth's sudden silence, and to conquer if necessary. Commander Kalos stood on the bridge, his gaze fixed on the blue planet below. His yellow eyes, narrow and predatory, gleamed with a mixture of anticipation and caution. He was a tactician to his core, But this was uncharted territory. Earth had always been an enigma, but now that enigma was a black hole of information. Silence was not an ordinary tactic for a species as brash as humanity. It was either a clever ruse or something far more dangerous. "We're getting no communication signals from the surface. Commander, the bridge officer, a Soreth lieutenant named Tahar reported. No response to hails. No activity on any known frequencies. It's as if the planet is dead." Kalos's lips curled into a thin, almost amused smile. Dead? Hardly. The humans would never simply roll over like that. Prepare a full scan of the surface. Find out what's happening on the ground. The Syndallax's sensors, advanced beyond anything Earth had ever conceived, swept across the planet. They scanned for energy signatures, for the telltale signs of civilization, power grids, industrial complexes, even something as simple as human foot traffic. But nothing. No unusual heat signatures, no faint electrical hums that would indicate human presence. The surface was eerily still. Even the usual atmospheric disturbances that accompanied urban life were absent. "Impossible," Kalos muttered. His fingers drummed impatiently on the armrest of his command chair. "Where are they?" As if in response to his frustration, the sensors picked up something. A faint, barely detectable pulse emanating from the far side of the planet. It was an odd, irregular signal, one that didn't quite match any known frequency. "There," Kalos said, pointing sharply. "Let's see what that is." The Syndallax adjusted its course, and a small fleet of drones detached from the ship, spiraling toward the source of the pulse. They were equipped with the latest in surveillance technology, able to penetrate Earth's atmosphere and examine the planet in ways that no human-made technology could match. The drones descended into the atmosphere, slicing through clouds and heading toward the pulse's origin, a remote, isolated location far from any known cities. What they found, however, was far stranger than Kalos could have ever imagined. Instead of a city or facility, they detected a massive, deep crater in the middle of a dense forest. It looked as if the ground had been torn apart, as though some immense force had carved out a vast, empty wound in the Earth's surface. The pulse was coming from the center of the crater, a low hum, almost hypnotic in its rhythm. "Report," Kalos snapped. The drone's feed was grainy, the visuals flickering with static, but the data was clear. Earth's surface had been scarred. Whatever happened here had left an impression that defied conventional understanding. The pulse grew stronger, and Kalos felt a shiver of unease creep up his spine. "This is not just silence," Kalos muttered, eyes narrowing. "This is a message." The Syndallax hovered in orbit, its darkened form casting a long shadow over the silent Earth below. Inside, Commander Kalos paced the length of the command deck, his mind working furiously as he considered their next move. The drones had returned with disturbing findings. A massive crater where once there had been a thriving region, now only a hollow shell. And at the center of that crater, a pulse, a signal. Kalos turned to his chief communications officer, a calculating Xoreth named Ziren. "Is it possible the humans have hidden something in that crater?" he asked. "Some sort of weapon or technology." Ziren was silent for a moment, studying the data on her console. "The pulse is unlike anything we've encountered, Commander. It's not like a human transmission. It's too deliberate, too controlled, almost as if someone was waiting for us." Kalos's gaze hardened. "What do you mean?" "The pulse is coded in a way we've never seen before," Zurin explained, her voice tense. "We've tried every known algorithm to decode it, but it keeps shifting. Every time we think we're getting close to understanding it, it reconfigures itself. It's a moving target. Kalos clenched his fists, irritation bubbling to the surface. So the humans have gone silent, and now they're playing games with us? This is no coincidence. They're trying to show us something. He strode over to the console and leaned over Zurin's shoulder, his eyes fixed on the screen. The pulses, now amplified and captured by the Syndallax's sensors, danced like erratic lightning bolts, each one a series of mathematical equations that twisted in on themselves. The complexity of the transmission made Kalos's head ache. "It's not a human weapon," Kalos muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "It's a language, a message, something more than we can understand at the moment." Zurin adjusted a few controls, amplifying the pulse. The transmission shifted again, reforming into a new pattern. A geometric sequence this time, intricate and precise. It seemed to draw on the very fabric of space itself, bending the wavelengths in ways that made the Syndallax's systems flicker and stutter. "Commander," Zurin's voice quivered slightly. "It's not just a message. It's a test." Kalos shot her a sharp glance. "A test? From whom?" Zurin hesitated before speaking, her eyes widening in realization. "I don't think this is just a message to us, Commander. I think it's a warning that we've just opened a door we can't close." The transmission's pattern shifted again, and the ship's systems began to groan under the weight of the data overload. Suddenly, the lights in the command center dimmed, and a deep, resonant hum filled the air, like the pulse was echoing directly through the walls. Before anyone could react, the signal morphed once more, a single phrase breaking through the chaos of static. "You are not ready." The words, chilling and cryptic, were unmistakable. The Syndallax's systems whined and groaned as it tried to process the data. Kalos felt a jolt of unease shoot through him. He knew then, without a shadow of a doubt, Earth had never been a simple target. Whatever force had made that message was far more powerful than any Xorth had ever imagined. The Syndallax was silent, save for the hum of its overtaxed systems and the rhythmic pulse of the mysterious transmission. The crew, their faces illuminated by the flickering lights of their consoles, remained eerily still, as if caught between confusion and fear. Commander Kalos stood at the front of the command deck, his sharp eyes fixed on the screen, as if willing the message to make sense. "You are not ready." The phrase echoed in his mind, reverberating with a force that felt like a physical blow. It was a warning, but what did it mean? Ready for what? And who had sent it? He had been so certain Earth's silence was an invitation, an opportunity to conquer, to prove the might of the Xorth dominion. But now this cryptic transmission, so filled with purpose, had turned everything upside down. "Commander," Zurin's voice broke through his thoughts. I don't know how much longer we can handle this. The pulse is warping our systems. At this rate, we'll lose control of the Syndallax entirely." Kalos didn't need to be told. The ship's systems had begun to destabilize, the once perfect coordination of its many subsystems now unraveling. The transmission was like a silent, invisible hand squeezing the ship's heart. Its powerful engines were flickering, the holographic displays warping, and the navigation systems were struggling to keep the ship in position. The Syndallax was effectively being tethered to Earth, unable to move, unable to break free from the force that now gripped it. "Shut down all non-essential systems," Kalos commanded. "We'll isolate the core functions. We need to figure out what we're dealing with." The crew scrambled to follow orders, but the damage was done. Every attempt to block or bypass the signal only made things worse. It was as if Earth itself had turned into a vast, unseen web, trapping the ship in a quantum snare. The ship was no longer in control of its movements. The very air felt thick, heavy with an intangible pressure. Kalos clenched his fists. There was no question now. This was not a simple power grab. Earth had done something that transcended technology, something that reached into the very fabric of reality itself. Whoever, or whatever, had sent this message, they were leagues beyond the Toroth. "We need to send a report back to the Dominion," Kalos said, his voice tight with frustration. "This is beyond us. Whatever they're hiding on that planet, we're not equipped to handle it." But as the command was given, the transmission flickered once more. This time, it was a single impossible image. A pattern so intricate that it made Kalos's mind reel. It resembled nothing he had ever seen. No natural formation, no known technology. It was alive, in its own way. A hologram, perhaps, but it pulsed with something more, like the heartbeat of an ancient entity. The crew stared at the image, a sense of dread creeping into their hearts. And then, in a moment of horrific clarity, the image morphed again. It was Earth, but it was different. The planet seemed to shimmer and shift, as if it were not solid, not static, but somehow fluid, an impossible representation of the world they thought they knew. The transmission was clear now. Earth itself was speaking to them. "We are waiting." Kalos's breath caught in his throat. The threat was unmistakable now. Earth was not just silent. It was preparing for something. Something that would change the galaxy forever. Commander Kalos's mind raced as the words from the transmission echoed in his skull. "We are waiting." It was a chilling declaration, one that sent waves of unease crashing through his thoughts. What did it mean? Who was we? And more importantly, why had Earth's silence been so deliberate? Whatever was happening on the surface of the planet was far beyond anything that Xorth had anticipated. Kalos had believed the humans were nothing more than an unpredictable species, dangerous in their arrogance, but ultimately fragile. But now the situation had taken a darker turn. The Cinderlax trembled again, a violent shudder running through its bulk, as if the ship itself were recoiling from the invisible force pressing in on it. The once cleaving hull of the warship now seemed to groan, its internal systems buckling under the weight of the relentless transmission. The crew was struggling to keep the ship steady, but it was becoming clear that they were no longer in control. Kalos's hands tightened around the armrests of his chair, his knuckles white with tension. "Commander, the ship's core is destabilizing," Zurin reported, her voice strained. "If we don't break free of this pulse, we'll lose control completely. The quantum systems are buckling under the strain." "Then shut it down," Kalos barked. "Do whatever it takes." Zurin hesitated, her gaze flicking to the status screen. "I can't, Commander. The signal isn't just interfering with our systems, it's rewriting them. It's like nothing we've ever encountered. The protocols don't apply." Kalos's blood ran cold as the reality of the situation set in. The humans weren't just hiding something. They were wielding an unknown power, something so advanced that even the Xorth, with all their superiority, were helpless before it. What kind of species could generate a signal that could physically affect ships millions of miles away? Kalos had never been one to back down, but this was something else. His usual bravado faltered in the face of the unknown. He slammed his fist onto the console in front of him. "Send a message to the Dominion. Now." Zurin complied, sending an emergency communication to the heart of the Xorth Empire. It was a desperate plea for reinforcements, for a fleet capable of dealing with a threat far beyond their understanding. But as the transmission was being sent, something strange occurred. The pulse, This unnerving signal shifted again, just as it had earlier. This time, however, it was not a series of cryptic numbers or patterns. It was a visual message, a sudden cascade of images, each one flashing in rapid succession. An ancient city, covered in moss and time-worn stone. A towering structure with spires reaching toward a sky filled with swirling constellations. A vast, barren desert, lit by the ghostly light of an unfamiliar star. And then, in the center of it all, the image crystallized. The face of a human, a woman, appeared. Her eyes were not just looking at the camera, they were looking through it, as if she were staring directly into the mind of the Xorth. "You've been warned," she said in a voice that was both familiar and alien, the words dripping with a sense of inevitable consequence. Kalos froze. The woman's gaze seemed to pierce him, her presence more real than the ship he stood in, more tangible than the metal walls surrounding him. The message ended abruptly, and for the first time in his life, Commander Kalos felt truly afraid. "She wasn't just speaking to us," Kalos whispered, his voice barely audible. "She was speaking to all of us." It wasn't just Earth that was waiting, it was humanity, and it was clear now. Whatever they had unleashed on the galaxy, they were not going to let anyone stand in their way. The Sindalax hung motionless in orbit, tethered to Earth by an invisible force that pulsed with a rhythm the ship's systems could no longer withstand. Commander Kalos's mind raced, processing the eerie transmission they had just received. The woman's face, so calm, so cold, lingered in his thoughts. She wasn't merely a message. She was a symbol, a warning. Humanity had been hiding something far more dangerous than any weapon that Xorth could have imagined. But now the truth was undeniable. Earth was not just a world of disorganized, squabbling humans. It was a force in the universe that had remained silent for far too long. And as much as Kalos despised being on the receiving end of an unknown power, part of him couldn't help but admire the audacity of it. They were no longer just a species of unpredictable monkeys. They were something much older, much more ancient. And they were ready to rise. "Commander," Zurin's voice broke through his thoughts, tense and urgent. "We're receiving another transmission from Earth. It's a direct signal this time. Not encrypted, not scattered." Kalos's eyes narrowed. He had no more patience for cryptic puzzles. If humanity wanted to play games, it was time to end them. "Put it on screen," he snapped. The command center darkened as the holographic display shifted. The face of the woman from the previous transmission appeared once again, her expression unreadable but not unfriendly. Her eyes, so unnervingly direct, locked onto Kalos's with the same unnerving intensity as before. There was no fear in her voice, no hesitance, only a quiet, implacable certainty. "You have come," she said, her voice steady, carrying through the bridge as though her words were meant to reach every corner of the galaxy. "And now you will understand." The image shimmered, and behind her, the familiar blue of Earth seemed to warp and bend. The woman's form merged with the planet itself, and for a moment it was as if Earth were speaking through her. "We are no longer the species you thought we were," she continued. "We have ascended beyond your comprehension. Your technologies, your empires, they are as fragile as dust in the wind compared to what we have become." Kalos's breath caught in his chest. The woman's words felt like a physical blow. The Xorth, the galaxy's supreme power, were nothing in the face of this new Earth. The silence had been a warning, yes. But now, it was clear. Humanity wasn't hiding from the universe. They had been preparing for it. "You were never meant to understand," the woman's voice intoned. "But now, it's too late. The time has come. The silence is over." A strange, harmonic hum filled the air, vibrating through the walls of the Syndallax. The ship trembled again, this time with an intensity that made the crew stumble in their seats. The transmissions cut off abruptly, leaving a thick, suffocating silence in its wake. Kalos turned to Zurin, his face pale, his voice cold with a mix of awe and dread. What just happened? Zurin swallowed hard. I think Earth has just taken its first step into something we will never be able to touch. And now we are caught in its wake. Kalos's gaze drifted to the image of Earth on the screen, quiet, serene, but now imbued with a power that defied logic. Asterisk humanity was no longer just a world of barbarians. They were something else entirely. And that something had just made its first move. In the stillness of space, the galaxy waited. The Syndallax shuddered again, the powerful hum of the planet's unseen force pulsing through the very structure of the ship. It was as though Earth had reached out with an invisible hand, tightening its grip, forcing the Xoroth warship into submission. The crew sat in stunned silence, the words of the human emissary still echoing in their minds. The transmission had been clear. Humanity was no longer the primitive species they had once been. They were something more, something other, and now that power was being unleashed. Commander Kalos's face was a mask of cold determination, but inside, a storm was raging. The implications of what had just transpired were impossible to ignore. He had come to Earth seeking answers, perhaps a way to bend humanity to the will of the Xoroth Dominion. But what he had found was far beyond anything he had anticipated. A force that made even the Xoroth seem fragile. He turned to Zurin, who was now at her console, her hands shaking as she tried to stabilize the ship's systems. "Report," Kalos barked, his voice tight with frustration. "We can't break free, Commander," Zurin replied, her voice strained. "The pulse from Earth is altering our quantum field. It's affecting everything. The longer we stay here, the more damage we'll take. We're stuck." Kalos clenched his fists, his sharp eyes scanning the star map projected before him. He had underestimated the humans. Now he had no choice but to confront the reality of what they had become. If they could do this to a ship as powerful as the Syndallax, then what could they do to an entire fleet? The question gnawed at him, but it wasn't the only one that lingered. What is Earth's true goal? Kalos muttered to himself. What do they want from the galaxy? Before Zurin could respond, the ship's alarms blared, an urgent, pulsing sound that set the crew into motion. The Syndallax's sensors were detecting a massive shift in space-time. It was subtle at first, but it grew rapidly, expanding outward from Earth. Something was happening to the fabric of the universe itself. "Commander," Zurin gasped, her face going pale. "The signal, it's spreading." Kalos's heart skipped a beat. The message from Earth had not just been a declaration, it had been a trigger. The pulse that had so thoroughly disabled their ship was not an isolated phenomenon. It was expanding, moving outward, a signal sent across the cosmos, rippling through space, reaching into every corner of the galaxy. Whatever humanity had done, they had initiated something far bigger than they could have imagined, or perhaps far bigger than they wanted to imagine. "We need to warn the Dominion," Kalos said urgently. "Get the transmission out now." But before Zurin could begin transmitting, the display flickered to life again, the familiar face of the human emissary filling the screen. This time, her expression was more intense, almost triumphant. "The galaxy is waking up," she said, her voice steady and unyielding, "and you will never stop it." The screen went dark. Kalos's stomach churned. In that moment, He realized what he had feared all along. Earth wasn't just waiting to rise, they had already begun. The universe was about to witness the birth of a new force, one that would irrevocably alter the balance of power in the galaxy. And there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. As the Cinderlax continued to drift, tethered to the shifting reality of Earth's pulse, Kalos knew one thing for certain. The galaxy was about to enter a new age, and humanity would be its architects. The Cinderlax drifted in orbit, the silent void of space now feeling unnervingly alive. Earth's pulse had expanded, rippling outward like the first waves of a cosmic storm. What had once been a quiet, enigmatic planet was now a force unto itself, its very existence altering the fabric of reality across the galaxy. Commander Kalos stood at the helm, his fists clenched, his mind a whirlwind of disbelief and dread. The galaxy was changing, and the Conquerors were no longer the apex predators of the stars. No, this was something else. Humanity had tapped into a power that defied comprehension, something far beyond the primitive technology that Xoroth had once viewed as an insignificant threat. Earth was no longer simply a planet. It was a nexus, a source of untapped, unfathomable power. "We've made contact with every major system in the galaxy," Commander Zurin reported, her voice strained. "All communication lines are down. The ripple from Earth is interfering with everything. The Dominion, the Carcor Alliance, the Tarathi, they are all reporting the same thing. Their fleets are crippled, their systems disrupted. The galaxy is in chaos." Kalos felt a bitter satisfaction twist in his chest. For so long, the Conquerors had seen themselves as the inevitable rulers of the stars, the supreme empire that would bring order to a fractured universe. But in the blink of an eye, humanity had rewritten those assumptions. Earth had ascended beyond the reach of any known power, and now it had left the galaxy struggling to catch up. "We're not even in control of our own ship anymore," Zurin continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "We've lost power to several critical systems. It's as if Earth itself is draining us. Whatever force they've tapped into, it's not just technological, it's something more." Kalos's mind churned with the possibilities. The human emissary had spoken of a new dawn, a galactic awakening. But what did that mean? Was this a harbinger of peace, or a precursor to something far darker? There was no way to know, not yet. But one thing was clear: Earth had chosen its moment. The silence had been an invitation, a warning, and now humanity had opened the door to a future that no one was ready for. "We need to get a message out to the Dominion," Kalos said, his voice tight with resolve. "We need to warn them before it's too late." Zurin nodded, but she hesitated. The same unease that had settled in Kalos's chest was reflected in her face. "Commander, I don't think the Dominion will be able to help us. Earth's influence is spreading too quickly. We are too far gone." Kalos's heart sank. He had always prided himself on being a man of action, of confidence. But now he was forced to admit the truth. There was no stopping this. Humanity had done something to the very fabric of the universe, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Suddenly, the comms screen flickered to life once more. The woman's face, calm and unyielding, appeared once again. But this time, there was no cryptic message. Her voice, when it came, was not a declaration. It was a simple statement of fact. "We are the architects of the new age," she said. "And you will learn to live in it." The screen went black. Kalos turned slowly to face the star-filled expanse beyond the bridge. The galaxy had just entered a new era, one where humanity would not only survive, it would dominate. And the Xoroth and every other power that had once ruled the stars would have to learn their place in the shadow of Earth's power. For the first time in his life, Kalos felt small, and the universe felt vast. The age of humanity had begun,